Is happening, everyone? Welcome back to another Vector Space Talks. I am Dimitri Ose, and I am joined today by good old Sabrina. Where you at, Sabrina? Hello.
Hello, Dimitris. I'm from Brazil. I'm in Brazil right now. I know that you are traveling
I
currently.
am.
Where are
I'm
you?
at CubeCon in Paris, and it has been magnificent. But I could not wait to join the session today because we've got Alfredo coming at us. What's up, dude?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, man. It's been a while. I think the last time that we chatted was 2 years ago, maybe right before your
Yeah,
book came out. When did the book come out? Your
yeah,
last,
something
no, the
like that.
no opposite book.
I would say, yeah, I would say a couple of years ago. Yeah,
Exactly.
I wrote, co-authored practical machine learning operations with Noah Gift, and it was published on O'Reilly.
Yeah, and that was I think 2 years ago. So you've been doing a lot of stuff since then. Let's
That's
be
right.
honest. You are maybe one of the most active men on the internet, and I always love seeing what you're doing. You're bringing immense value to everything that you touch. I'm really excited to be able to chat with you for this next 30 minutes.
Yeah, of
And
course.
yeah, like maybe just we'll start it off. We're going to get into it when it comes to what you're doing and really what the space looks like right now, right? But
Yeah,
I would love to hear a little bit of what you've been up to since for the last 2 years because I haven't talked to you.
yeah, that's right. Well, several different things actually. Eh, right after we chatted last time, I joined Microsoft to work in developer relations. Microsoft has a big group of folks working in developer relations, and it basically for me signaled my shift away from regular software engineering. I was primarily doing software engineering, and thought that perhaps with the books and some of the courses that I had published, it was time for me to do more, get into more teaching and providing useful content, which is really something very rewarding. And in developer relations, in advocacy in general, that's kind of it's a kind of like a way of teaching. We demonstrate technology, how it works from a technical point of view. So aside from that, I started working really closely with several different universities. I work with Georgia Tech, Oxford University, Carnegie Mellon University, and Duke University, where I've been working as an adjunct professor for a couple of years as well. So at Duke, what I do is I teach a couple classes a year. One is on machine learning. Last year was machine learning operations, and this year is going to, I think, hopefully I'm not messing anything up. I think we're going to shift a little bit to doing operations with large language models. And in the fall, I teach a programming class for graduate students that want to join one of the graduate programs and they want to get a primer on Python. So I teach a little bit of that. And in the meantime, also in partnership with Duke, getting a lot of courses out on Coursera, and from large language models to doing stuff with Azure to uh, machine learning operations to Rust. I've been doing a lot of Rust lately, which I really like. So yeah, so a lot of different things, but I think the core pillar for me remains being able to teach and spread the knowledge.
Love it, man. And I know you've been diving into vector databases. Can you
Yeah,
tell us more?
yeah. Well, um, the thing is that when you're trying to teach, and yes, one of the courses that we had out for large language models was applying retrieval augmented generation, which is the basis for vector databases, to see how it works. Hey, like this is how it works. These are the components that you need. Let's create an application from scratch and see how it works. And for those that don't know, retrieval augmented generation is kind of like having the other day I saw a description about this, which I really like, which is a way of, it's kind of like having an open book test. So the large language model is the student, and they have like an open book, so they can see the answers and then repackage that into their own words and provide an answer, which is kind of like what we do with vector databases in the retrieval augmented generation pattern. So we've been putting a lot of examples on how to do these. And in the case of Azure, you're enabling certain services. You enable a search. There's the Azure AI search service, which is really good. But sometimes when you're trying to teach specifically, it is useful to have a very straightforward way to do this. And applying or creating a retrieval augmented generation pattern, it's kind of tricky. I think we're not there yet to do it in a nice, straightforward way. So there are several different options, Qdrant being one of them. So usually I get asked, like, but why are you using Qdrant? Like, what's the big deal? Like, why are you picking these over like all of the other ones? And to me, it boils down to aside from being like renowned or recognized and that it works fairly well, there's one core component that is critical here, and that is it has to be very straightforward, very easy to set up so that I can teach it. Because if it's easy, well, sort of like easy to or straightforward to teach, then you can take the next step and you can, make it a little more complex, put other things around it, and that creates a great development experience and a learning experience as well. Like if something is very complex, if the list of requirements is like very long, you're not going to be very happy, like you're going to spend all this time trying to figure. And when you have, similar to what happens with automation, when you have like a list of 20 different things they need to, in order to like say deploy a website, you're going to get things out of order. You're going to forget one thing. You're going to have a typo. You're going to mess it up. You're going to have to start from scratch, and you're going to get into a situation where you can't get out of it. And Qdrant does provide a very straightforward way to run the database, and that one is the in-memory implementation on with Python. So you can actually write a little bit of Python once you install the libraries, and say I want to instantiate a vector database, and I wanted to run it in memory. So for teaching, this is great. It's like, hey, just put, of course, it's not for production, but just run this, write these couple lines, and let's get right into it. Like, let's just start populating these and see how it works. And it works. It's great. You don't need to have all of these like, well, let's launch Kubernetes over here and let's have all of these like, no, why? I mean, sure, you want to create a business model and you want to launch to production eventually, and you want to have all that running perfect. But for this setup, like for understanding how it works, for trying baby steps into understanding vector databases, this is perfect. My one requirement, or my one wish list item, is to have that in-memory thing for Rust. That would be pretty sweet, because I think it will make teaching Rust and retrieval augmented generation with Rust, much easier. I wouldn't have to worry about bringing up containers or external services. So that's the deal with Rust. And I'll tell you one last story about why I think specifically making it easy to get started with, so that I can teach it, so that others can learn from it, is crucial. Like I would say almost 50 years ago, maybe a little bit more, my dad went to Italy to have a course on on athletics. My dad was involved in sports, and he was going through this. I think it was like a 6 month specialization on athletics, and he was in class, and it had been recent that the high jump had transitioned from one style to the other. The previous style, the old style, right now it's the old style. It's kind of like, it was like kind of like over the bar. It was kind of like a weird style, and it had recently transitioned to a thing called the Fosbury flop. This person, his last name is Fosbury, Dick Fosbury, invented the Fosbury flop. He said, "No, I'm just gonna go straight at it, then do a little curve, and then jump over it." And then he did, and then he started winning everything. And everybody's like, "What? This guy?" Well, first they thought he was crazy, and they thought that dismissive of what he was trying to do. And there were people, the sticklers, that wanted to stay with the older style, right? But then he started beating records and winning medals, and so people were like, "Oh, well, is this a good thing? Let's try it out." So there was a whole, they were casting doubt. It's like, is this really the thing? Is this really what we should be doing? So one of the questions that my dad had to answer in this specialization he did in Italy was like, which style is better? Is the old style or the new style? And so my dad said, like, is the new style. And they asked him, like, why? Why is the new style better? And he didn't choose the path of answering, like, well, because this guy just won the Olympics, or he just did a record over here. That at the end is meaningless. What he said was, it is the better style because it's easier to teach. And it is 100% correct. When you're teaching high jump, it is much easier to teach the Fosbury flop than the other style. It is super hard. So you start seeing this parallel in teaching and learning, where, oh, but like with this other one, you have all of these, world records and things are going great. Well, great, but like, is anybody going to try? Like, are you going to have more people looking into it, or are you going to have less? What is it that we're trying to do here, right?
Not gonna lie, I did not see how you were gonna land the plane on coming from the high jump into the
There you
vector
go.
database space, but you did it gracefully. That was well done. So
There you
basically,
go.
the easier it is to teach, the more people are going to be able to
Yep.
jump on board, and the more people are going to be able to get
Yep.
value out of it.
And I absolutely love it. By the way, it's a pleasure to meet you, Fredo. And I was actually about to ask you, I love your background and as an Olympic athlete, right? And I was wondering, like, do you make any connections, or how do we interact this background with your current teaching in AI? And do you see like any similarities or something coming from that approach into what you apply
Yeah.
today?
Well, I mean, you're bringing a great point. It's taken me a very long time to feel comfortable talking about my professional sports past. Um, I don't want to feel like I'm overwhelming anyone, or trying to be like a show off. So I usually try not to mention, although I'm feeling more comfortable mentioning my professional past. But um, the only situations where I think, like, it's good to talk about it is when I feel like there's a small chance that I might get someone thinking about the possibilities of what they can actually do, and what they can try, and things that are seemingly complex might be achievable. So you mentioned similarities, but I think there are a couple of things that happen when you're an athlete in any sport, really, that you're trying to, or you're operating at the very highest level. And there's several things that happen there. You have to be consistent, and it's something that I teach my kids as well. I have one of my kids. He's like, I did really, a lot of exercise today, and then for a week he doesn't do anything else. And he's like, well, like, now I'm going to do exercise again, and I'm just going to like do 4 hours. And it's like, wait a sec. It's okay. You want to do this is great. but in no intensity. You need to be consistent. Oh, Dad, you don't let me, like, work out. And it's like, no, work out. Good. I support you. But you have to be consistent. I mean, and slowly start ramping up and slowly start getting better. And it happens a lot with learning, with, we are in an era that, like, concepts and things are advancing so fast that things are getting obsolete even faster. So you're always in this motion of trying to learn. So what I would say is, the similarities are in, like, the consistency. Like, you have to keep learning, you have to keep applying yourself, but it can't be like, oh, today I'm going to read this whole book from start to end, and you're just going to learn everything about, I don't know, Rust. It's like, well, no. Try applying Rust a little bit every day and feel comfortable with it, and at the very end, you will do better. Like, you can't, go with high intensity, because you're going to get burned out. You're going to overwhelmed, and it's not going to work out. You don't go to the Olympics by, working out for like a few months. Actually, a very long time ago, a reporter asked me, it's like, so how many months have you been working out, preparing for the Olympics? And it's like, what do you mean? What do you mean with how many months? I've been training my whole life for this. What are we talking about?
We're not
Right?
talking in months or years. We're talking in lifetimes.
Right. So, you have to take it easy. Like, you can't do that. Then, beyond the consistency, um, you have to, well, consistency goes hand in hand with discipline. Um, I came to the US in 2006. I don't live, like, I was born in Peru. And I came to the US with no degree. I didn't go to college. Well, I went to college for a few months, and then I dropped out. And I didn't have a career. I didn't have experience. I was just recently married. I have never worked in my life because I used to be a professional athlete. And the only thing that I decided to do was to do amazing work, apply myself, and try to keep learning and never stop learning. In the back of my mind, it's like, oh, I have, like, a tremendous knowledge gap that I need to fulfill by learning. And actually, I have, tremendous respect, and I'm very uh, I'm incredibly grateful by all of the people that opened doors for me and gave me an opportunity. One of them being Noah Gift, which I co-authored a few books with him and some of the courses, and he actually taught me uh, to write Python. I didn't know how to program, and he said, "You know what? I think you should I think you should learn to write some Python." And I was like, huh, Python? Why would I ever need to do that? And I did, and he's like, oh, let's just find something to automate. I mean, what a concept. Find something to apply automation. And every week on Fridays, we'll just take a look at it, and that's it. And we did that for a while. And then he said, you know what? You should apply for speaking at PyCon. It's like, how can I be speaking at a conference when I just started learning? It's like, oh, your perspective is different. You just started learning these. You're going to do it in an interesting way. So I think those are concepts that are very important to me. Stay disciplined, stay consistent, and keep at it. The secret is that there's no secret. That's the the bottom line. You have to keep consistent, otherwise things are always going. Making excuses is very simple.
Hmm. The secret is there is no secret. That's beautiful. So you did kind of sprinkle this idea of, oh, I wish there was more stuff happening with Qdrant and Rust. Can you talk a little bit more to that? Because one piece of Qdrant that people tend to love is that it's built in Rust, right? But also, I know that you mentioned before, could we get a little bit of this action so that I don't have to deal with any, what was it you were saying, the containers? Or yeah.
Yeah. So right now, if you want to have a proof of concept, and I always go for, like, what's the easiest, the most straightforward, the less annoying things I need to do, the better. And with Python, the Python API for Qdrant, you can just write a few lines and say, I want to create an instance in memory, and then that's it. The database is created for you. This is very similar, or I would say actually almost identical to how you run SQLite. SQLite is the embedded database. You can create it in memory, and it's actually how I teach SQL as well. When I have to teach SQL, I use SQLite. I think it's perfect. But in Rust, like you said, Qdrant's backend is built on Rust. There is no in-memory implementation. So you are required to have an actual instance of the Qdrant database running. So you have a couple options, but one of them probably means you'll have to bring up a container with Qdrant running, and then you'll have to connect to that instance. So when you're teaching, the development environments are kind of constrained. Either you are in a lab somewhere, like Coursera has labs, but those are like self-contained. It's kind of tricky to get them running. 100% you can run multiple containers at the same time. So things start becoming more complex. Not only more complex for the learner, but also for in this case, like the teacher, me, who wants to figure out how to make this all run in a very constrained environment. And that, makes it tricky. So I would say, and I've asked the team, by the way, and I was told that maybe at some point they can do some magic and put the in-memory implementation on the Rust side of things, which I think it would be tremendous.
And we're gonna advocate for that on our side. We're also gonna be asking for it, and I think this is really good too. It really makes it easier. Me as a student not long ago, I do see what you mean. It's quite hard to get it all working very fast in the time of a class that you don't have like a lot of time, and students can get, um, you know, I don't know. It's quite complex. I do get what you mean, and you also are working both on the tech industry and on academia, which I think is super interesting. And I always kind of feel like those two are a bit disconnected sometimes. And I was wondering what you think, that how important is the collaboration of these two areas, considering how fast the AI space is going to right now, and what are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Well, I would say, and I don't like generalizing, but I'm going to generalize right now. I would say most universities are several steps behind. And there's a lot of complexities involved in higher education specifically. Most importantly, uh, these institutions tend to be like fairly large. And with fairly large institutions, what do you get? Oh, you get the magical bureaucracy for anything. You want to do some things like, oh, well, you need to talk to that department that needs to authorize something that needs to go to some other department. It's like, oh, I'm going to change the curricula. It's like, no, you can't. What? You what does that mean? I have actually had conversations with faculty in universities where they say, listen, curricula, yeah, we get that we need to update it, but we change curricula every 5 years. And so see you in a while. Like, it's been 3 years. We have two more years to go. See you in a couple of years. And that's detrimental to students. Now, I get it. Building curricula, it's very hard. It takes a lot of work for the faculty to put something together. So it is something that, from the faculty perspective, is like, I mean, they're not going to get paid more if they update the curricula, right? And it's a massive amount of work. Now, that of course comes to the detriment of the learner. The student will be underserviced because they will have to go through curricula that is fairly dated. Now, there are situations and there are programs where this doesn't happen. And I've, like at Duke, I've worked with several faculty. They're like, we're going to teach, what was the other day? They're teaching Llama file, which was built by Mozilla. When the Llama file came out, like it was just like a few months ago, and I think it's incredible. And I think those skills that are the ones that students need today in order to not only learn these things, but also be able to apply them when they're looking for a job or trying to professionally even apply them into their day to day. Now that's one side of things, but then there's the other aspect of, for in the case of Duke, as well as other universities out there, they're using these online platforms so that they can put courses out there faster. Um, do you really need to go through a 4-year program to understand how retrieval augmented generation works or how to, implement it? I would argue no. But would you be better out like taking a course that will take you like perhaps a couple of weeks to go through and be fairly proficient? I would say yes, 100%. And you see several institutions putting courses out there that are meaningful, that are useful, that they can cope with the speed at which things are needed. And so I think it's kind of good. And I think that sometimes we tend to think about knowledge and learning things kind of like in a bubble, especially here in the US. I think there's this like college is this magical place where all of the amazing things happen, and if you don't go to college, things are going to go very bad for you. And I don't think that's true. I think if you like college, if you like university, by all means, take advantage of it. You want to experience it, that sounds great. I think there's tons of opportunity to do it outside of the university or the college setting, and taking online courses from validated instructors. They have like a good profile, not someone that just like dumped something on generative AI and started
Not someone
pushing
like
stuff
me,
out that
someone like you.
well, if you want to, yeah, sure, why not? I mean, there's students that really like my teaching style. Like, I think that's great. If you don't like my teaching style, sometimes I tend to go a little bit slower because I don't want to overwhelm anyone. um, that's all good, but there is opportunity. And when I mention these things, people are like, oh really? And I mean, I'm not advertising for Coursera or anything else, but like some of these platforms, if you pay a monthly fee, I think is between $40 and $60. I think on the expensive side, you can take advantage of all of these courses and as much as you can take them.
Yep.
Sometimes even companies say, hey, you have a paid subscription, go take it all. And I've met people like that. It's like, this is incredible, I'm learning so much. Perfect. I think there's a mix of things. I don't think there's like a binary answer, like, oh, you need to do this, or no, don't do that, and everything's going to be well again.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about your course, and if I wanted to go on Coursera, what can I expect from it?
Yeah, and and again, I don't think as much as I like talking about my courses and the things that I do, I want to emphasize, like, if someone is watching this video or listening in to what we're talking about, find something that is interesting to you and find a course that kind of delivers that thing, that sliver of interest, interesting stuff, and then try it out. I think that's the best way. Don't get overwhelmed by it, like, oh, like, is this the right is this the right vector database that I should be learning? Is this instructor like, it's like, no, try it out. What's going to happen? You don't like it, just like, I mean, when you're watching a bad video series or docu series on Netflix or any streaming platform, like, do you just like, oh, I pay my $10 a month, so I'm going to muster through this whole 20 more episodes of this thing that I don't like? It's meaningless. It doesn't matter. Just move on.
Yeah.
So, having said that, on Coursera specifically with Duke University, we tend to put courses out there that are going to be used in our programs, in the things that I teach. For example, we just released the large language models specialization. Specialization is a grouping of between 4 and 6 courses. So in there we have doing large language models with Azure, for example, introduction to generative AI, in like having a very simple RAG pattern with Qdrant. I've also have examples on how to do it with Azure AI Search, which I think is pretty cool as well. How to do it locally with Llama file, which I think is great. You can have all of these large language models running locally, and then you have a little bit of Qdrant sprinkle over there, and then you have RAG pattern. Now, I tend to teach with things that I really like, and I'll give you a quick example. There are I think there's 3 data sets that are one of what are the top 3 most used data sets in all of machine learning and data science. Those are the Boston housing market, the diabetes data set in the US, and the other one is the Titanic. And everybody uses those. And I don't really understand why. I mean, perhaps I do understand why. It's because they're easy, they're clean, they're ready to go, nothing's ever wrong with these, and everybody has used them to boredom. But for the life of me, you wouldn't be able to convince me to use any of those, because these are not topics that I really care about, and they don't resonate with me. I mean, the Titanic specifically is just horrid. I mean, well, if I was 37 and I'm on first class and I'm male, would I survive? It's what are we trying to do here? how is this useful to anyone? So so I tend to use things that I like, and I'm really passionate about wine, so I built my own data set, which is a collection of wines from all over the world. They have the ratings, they have the region, they have the type of grape, and the notes, and the name of the wine. So when I'm teaching, I'm like, look at this. This is amazing. It's wines from all over the world. So let's do a little bit of things here. So for RAG, what I was able to do is actually in the courses as well, I do I really like, wines from Argentina, but these wines, it would be amazing if you can find me not a Malbec, but perhaps a Cabernet Franc that is amazing and it's just it goes through Qdrant, goes back to Llama file using some large language model or even small language model, like the Phi 2 from Microsoft, I think is really good. And it tells you, yeah, sure. This, I get that you want to have some good wines. Here's some good stuff that I can give you. And so it's great, right? I think it's great. So I think those kinds of things that are interesting to the person that is teaching or presenting, I think that's the key. Because whenever you're talking about things that are very boring, that you do not care about, things are not going to go well for you. I mean, if I didn't like teaching, if I didn't like vector databases, I mean, you would tell right away. It's well, yes, I've been doing stuff with the vector databases. They're good. Yeah, Qdrant, very good. You would tell right away. I can't lie very good.
Yeah, you can't fool anybody.
No.
Well, dude, this is awesome. We will drop a link to the chat. We will drop a link to the course in the chat so that in case anybody does want to go on this wine tasting journey with you, they can. And I'm sure there's all kinds of things that will spark the creativity of the students as they go through it. Because when you were talking about that, I was like, oh, it would be really cool to make that same type of thing, but with ski resorts and
There you go.
around the world. And if I want this type of ski resort, I'm going to just ask my chatbot. So I'm excited to see what people create with it. I also really appreciate you coming on here, giving us your time and
Of course.
talking through all this. It's been a pleasure, as always, Alfredo. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Always happy to chat with you. I think Qdrant is doing a very solid product. Hopefully, my wish list item of in memory in Rust comes to fruition. But I get it. Sometimes there are other priorities. It's all good. Yeah, if anyone wants to connect with me, I'm always active on LinkedIn. primarily. Always happy to connect with folks and talk about learning and improving, and always being a better person.
Excellent. Well, we will sign off. And if anyone else out there wants to come on here and talk to us about vector databases, we're always happy to have you. Feel free to reach out. And remember, don't get lost in vector space, folks. We will see you on the next one.
Good night. Thank you so much, Alfredo.